What's up, guys? This is DeAnJilo of the DNA podcast. Just a heads up, the first 2.5 minutes of this show will be audio only, but after that, you get to see our beautiful faces. Hope you enjoy today's episode. I'm not freestyling today. I gotta get in my bag. Not today though.
Here we are. All right. We're gonna figure out the name. What we say, like more life, collab.
We got a lot of names.
A lot of names.
the Well Collective, to Conquer Peace, both of our personal brands.
There we go.
We'll get there.
We're gonna figure it out.
We just know what we're talking about. We don't know what this is called.
That's all that matters, y'all. It doesn't matter how you present something. It matters what's inside.
Hey.
And we got something special for y'all. So we're super excited.
What's up, guys?
Hello. How y'all doing?
We're doing well, if I were to speak for the collective, but not at the same time, you know? If I'm going to be honest.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
But yeah, so me and Angel, in our preparation of today's topic, we were just talking about how much we really enjoyed chatting last time. Please check out our episode about dealing with loneliness and aloneness as men.
So good.
Angel was like, that was the best episode I've recorded since, and now I'm like scared that we'll never ever top it. I'm not scared, actually.
I mean,
I might be overconfident.
I mean,
You want me to talk about hard emotions? My whole life has prepared me for this.
Literally, man. If this was a battle of competitions, the enemy will be nervous, though, because we got bars, we got trials, tribulations, and a lot of accomplishments and victories in it, man. So super excited to be doing this. Like I shared with DeAnJilo, man, he's truly been like a blessing in disguise to just like help me with my confidence and courage to do this. And after that last episode, y'all, like working on the video edits and everything, I was struggling to pay attention because like it was phenomenal content. I was literally like tuning in like I wasn't part of the conversation. So please check it out, man. Loneliness is such an important concept that we, suffer in silence and suffer alone. And so hopefully there's something from that to glean. But after doing that, man, like I was just like, bro, we just got to keep that momentum going. Our word teaches us that iron sharpens iron. And so like we got to keep our blades sharp to be ready for whatever. And so, from that birth this whole concept of let's just go down a rabbit hole of topics to talk about. Yeah. And it's about to be so fun, y'all. And I'm even excited because like I was like, bro, like you got to take lead on this topic that we're talking about because like this is in my dude's bag, so he's ready. So I'm taking a back seat on this one. I'm just along for the journey and excited to like learn, y'all. So we gonna be in this together. So definitely check this out. We'll have it readily available when it's that time, in due time, right? So
for sure.
Super excited, man. So yeah.
I mean, I will say that. Just to remind you guys real quick of we're gonna be trying to talk about emotions and feelings that are kind of taboo in the man community.
Yeah.
Kind of unpack it.
Yeah.
And then tools to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the last time me and Angel were sitting, we were talking. We were like, oh, okay, I think the subject is going to be about dealing with aloneness and loneliness and the dichotomy of the two, and even challenging the perception of it being a bad thing.
Yeah.
I would say that I was the difference between that and this topic that we're going to have is I think I was it was almost a reflective, like okay, that I've gotten some wisdom in this area that I can share because I'm close enough to remembering that feeling, and feeling comes back too. But this one is like in real time. This one is probably as of within 2 days of just kind of reoccurring.
Oh my goodness.
And if you've seen Inside Out 2, you really understand this a little bit, the idea of anxiety.
Yeah.
So if you haven't checked out Inside 2,
I actually have not.
We got to get you on that.
I know. I need to go see it.
Yeah,
told me
I might have to roll with you there, but So
it's
there,
theaters, right?
Say again.
It's still in theaters.
I don't know. It came out a while ago, but it was doing so well that it might
Yeah.
still be in the movies.
If it's still in there, I'm gonna try.
So I don't want any spoilers there, but the idea of how anxiety can rule your life. What I liked what they did with it was sometimes the idea of anxiety is primarily a negative connotation. Anxiety does have it naturally occurs, but it does have some positive roles for us, preparing for worst case scenarios, thinking about the future a little bit more. Like that's kind of how, but you don't, the idea of like not being driven by it, I think is interesting. But I will say in my experience, and I'm very curious about your experience with the idea of anxiety, admitting that I feel anxious is a little bit synonymous with a lack of confidence specifically with men, if we're talking about like machoism. Of course, for me and you, like I feel like I'm drawn to people who are willing to be vulnerable and admit like things that might not be socially, the general consensus might not be like, oh yeah, like it's okay for you to say that. But generally speaking, anxiety is connected to not sureness, which is then connected to a lack of confidence, which no man wants to be associated, particularly with a lack of confidence. But when you think about the word anxiety, like what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think two words come to mind: insecurity and mismanaged expectations. Right. I think anxiety is our thought process to believe that whatever we put our mind to focus on, we can control the outcome, the expectation of it, right? And when we can't control the outcome of something that we expect to happen a certain way, we get anxious about it, right? You know, like for example, if you were applying for, you got a job interview and you really need this job because you're in a tough season, and this job is going to be the thing that puts money in your pocket, help you pay rent this month, so on and so forth. You're going to have a lot of anxiety around it because you can't control if you're going to get that job, right? In comparison to you have a job and you got to go to work and you don't feel like getting up, you're not going to think too much about the fact of like you're going to eventually get up in comparison to like you're trying to get this job so you can pay the bills. And so I think it's just like putting a lot of thought into trying to control an outcome that you
ultimately can't control.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. That is kind of where my brain goes when I think of anxiety, is just like overanalyzing things that you don't have control over. And that's why you probably are feeling the thing, because you can't control it, but you really want a specific outcome. Good.
Exactly.
I think that for me, when I think about anxiety and dealing with it in a healthy way, my perception of healthiness, because I'm not a therapist, the biggest thing for me was just sitting and admitting that I felt it. Like
that's real.
Yeah,
that is tough. Yeah, you said that earlier. I do struggle with admitting that I'm anxious, like because there's something about when you admit to someone or even to yourself that you're anxious, like is a vulnerability in itself. It's literally like saying like, hey, like it's almost, at least for me as a man, like it's almost saying like, hey, I don't have things under control. And it's almost like, at least for me, like it feels like there's an expectation, like as a man, I'm supposed to have it under control, things figured out. And anxiety is admitting that I don't. Yeah.
That's good. I wrote this down and I want to, it was like I'm telling you that I'm reading it because I don't know where it came from. But I wrote down that number one, I want men to, like, I think it's really important to admit it. And I think that the second thought you should have is that you just want to acknowledge that it's okay. You want to normalize this feeling. Just having it is not a bad thing. In fact, it's quite normal. It's common. It's such a common emotion that we all feel.
Yeah.
But what can happen is you feel anxiety, you don't want to admit it, and so you compartmentalize, so you don't acknowledge an aspect of yourself. And then, I mean, how can you really help yourself if you can't be honest with where you are, right? So to that point, yeah. I mean, in your same issue for me, right? Like I think it took me 2 days to admit that I felt anxious about something. Like my body was feeling very anxious. I would say, what's today? Well, I don't want to date whatever this podcast was, but I'd say about 3 days ago, I was reacting to the idea of like feeling anxious, but I hadn't really gotten to the understanding that, I'm feeling anxious. Like it took me a day or two. It took some forced pausing in my world. I just knew that I was like, I'm irritable, I'm moody, and to be fair, I don't know if anyone else was noticing, but I felt it. But to me, once I got to the point of being like, I feel anxious, like there was a freedom in that for myself.
Yeah. So a question for me, like, how do you said the second step is to like acknowledge the feeling of anxious. Like, how do you acknowledge it? Like, what does that look like? Do you journal it? Do you lay it in bed and you realize, oh, I'm anxious, or like, what does that like acknowledgement look like? Looking in the mirror, like, I don't know.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think that, and Jesus modeled this to me, is the pausing. There's so much power in pausing with yourself.
Okay.
Like the habit of whether it's journaling can be pausing, meditating could be pausing, but just like stopping or whenever you have the time, because we're busy. We're all very busy. To be present with yourself, I think is the first step. And so that's what it was for me. I have a couple of habits in me. When I feel off, I'll either go do some yoga, I'll journal, or I'll make a phone call. And I think if I'm trying to remember, it was Sunday and it was just a social day and I was working, so I had to compartmentalize. I was like, I don't feel great, but whatever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got to a place, I think I was at a friend's place at that night, and he's just a very safe place for me. So I just started blabbering, and he gave me the space. And then in that, I was like, oh, okay, I think I feel anxious. I need to go do some yoga. You know what I mean? So, I think hopefully that answers that question.
It does. It communicated the aspect that there's not one right way to acknowledge it. However, it's a very clear way of how you disacknowledge it. What's the word?
Compartmentalize or not acknowledge it. Yeah.
So that's good. Okay, that's good.
I think that's such an important question, and I think it actually builds off of our last topic, loneliness. When we were talking about aloneness, I think that we also had this conversation about how it's not all a bad thing, and aloneness plays an integral role in our exploration of self. And I think that part of being able to deal with anxiety is understanding what are the things that have been pouring into you, what are the things that you are able, allow you to pause or force pause or, disconnect from the busyness of it all. And I think that that's something that you need to have. And I think that that's something when you're in that alone season, and let's be real, you can be in a relationship and be in an alone season.
Absolutely.
You have to explore yourself. And part of that is learning. Now I have a toolkit. I have a whole note of toolkits of things that I know I can do that will get me to be reflective in a purposeful way, not in an over analytical way. So just a thought.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. All right, so we now acknowledged it. Remind me of the third step. What's the third step?
I don't even know. Have we? So the first step is acknowledgement. The second step is to not shame yourself. Normalize the experience, right? Like, sure, anxiety might be a sign of a lack of confidence. So we all have things we're insecure about. You know what I mean? So just giving, as opposed to shaming yourself for feeling it. All right, I feel anxiety. Okay, this is normal. This is okay. This does not define me. This does not mean I'm a person that lacks confidence. I'm just anxious. Step 3. I'm glad you asked, because now we're gonna figure out what step 3 is.
I know.
I think that step 3 would be to give space to. Once you've given space to it, I would say do something to relieve the anxiety. It's a feeling. Feelings come and go. So that's where the yoga came in for me. The journaling came in for me. I had to meditate. I had to do 2 really long meditation sessions, and then I left that, and my body I finally felt like my body was like lighter, because you feel anxiety in your body, bro.
I wonder. I would even go. I wonder. I would even say that is probably step 4. I would say step 3 is confession.
Oh, good.
Because you talked about that. You mentioned that you went to go talk to your homeboy, and he gave you that space. It was a safe space. I think there's power in admitting it to yourself. I think there's even more power to admit it to community.
Yeah.
Then
safe community.
It's like safe community. Absolutely safe community. Because then it acknowledges the aspect that you won't be met with shame or any sort of guilt or condemnation when you can confess it to community.
That's good.
That is safe, right?
That's good.
It's like, I think it's one thing to be able to acknowledge you have anxiety and deal with it on your own. It's another thing to then have another person reaffirm, not just affirm, but then reaffirm that it's okay to feel these things. So then you can maybe even grow that muscle to feel comfortable not being okay in a public space, That's
good.
Yeah. So I'd probably say that was 3, honestly.
I love that. There you go.
Yeah.
As you're talking about community, I was thinking about there's a danger of community. So I think that there is
True.
you want to like when you're going to someone, it's a fine line, but I feel like you want to have an idea of what you need from that person before.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have friends that are really good reflectors. You
Yeah.
have some friends who just they're advice people, and like like sometimes advice is great, and sometimes I just need you to empathize. And this is we know with men we're predisposed to going straight to advice.
Yeah.
I have the blessing of me and that guy have done life for 3 or 4 years. I know that he's a natural reflector, which is part of why I feel like safer with him. It's not like I had this thought of like I need to make sure he knows to not give me advice. I probably would have been open to advice, but in that moment, getting the empathy, getting the reflection was so imperative. And I do think in an ideal world, I didn't do this. In an ideal world, if you're going to go to community, you want to have an idea of what am I needing from this person so that that person can support you as best as possible. But I do think that's my personal job to figure that out.
Yeah. No, that's true. That is true. Like, I think it's important to understand the difference between help and support. Like, like if you, and the way I describe help is something you have to ask for, and support is someone assumes that you need. Right? Like you could have like a full open wound cut on your hand, and I could think I'm helping you by giving you a Band-Aid. But no, bro, you need the whole alcohol, stitches, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But you got to let me know. Like you got to communicate that because it requires a level, I think a sense of self-awareness, confession or admittance to it. And then that's the responsibility on that person. And then on the other, for me, my responsibility would then be able to express the ability and willingness to offer that help if it's in my capacity. And so that's like really important. That's really good work to do as well.
That's good.
In that anxious process, because I mean, you communicated what led up to you feeling the anxiety, being able to acknowledge you were feeling it, confess it to someone, and then even had like the idea of outlets that will help you.
Yeah, healthy outlets are huge,
right?
man. Yeah.
Right? So that's like really good. Okay.
Because the danger of compartmentalizing is if you do push these things to the side, your body, you can't ignore what you feel.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to go to these other things where you just kind of want to numb, and we can go down the whole list of things, and I'm
so many, yo.
I ain't perfect
many,
either.
yo.
So
Yeah.
so that's why, this conversation is important because it's like you have got to give yourself space to feel the things that are normal to feel. And anxiety is an incredibly normal feeling.
Yeah.
And it is a detriment to yourself if you don't admit it to yourself. And there are consequences.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. The consequences is you choosing into unhealthy things.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's like you can feel anxiety in relationships. You could feel anxiety in your career. You could feel anxiety at work. You could feel anxiety with your to-do list, right? Because you have a lot of things to do or you have no things to do.
Right.
Like anxiety comes like in so many different ways and facets. So like, I think I just felt led to like really share that identification because like we can always assume or make it out like anxiety is like this grandiose thing, like, like panic attack or something extreme. Like anxiety could be the simple fact of like, you just don't know what you don't know and you don't have a situation under control. And so it's important to like really acknowledge that like any and every moment where you don't have things under control and you spend a lot of time talking or thinking about something, like it can only like, I really don't like using this word, being a believer. It's so weird. Like it only like manifests or builds up, right? Like every time I hear somebody say that word, I get like, oh my gosh, okay, we're having one of those kind of conversations, but it's a word, y'all. Yeah. So, it builds up in you. And I mean, I was sharing with a friend, and I feel like I broke it down in like a spectrum, right? There's like levels to anxiety, right? Because there's a thought, and then that thought turns into worry. Worry just means you're spending a little bit more time on that thought than you typically would, right? Like when you're picking your clothes out, you put a thought like, am I going to wear the Bullets jersey or am I going to wear the Nuggets jersey? Like Thanks. I like this red, white, and blue fit, so I'm going to go with that, right? Not too much thought. You're not going to worry about it the rest of the day. But then like, let's say you had a big meeting at work, so now you worry like, dang, I'm wearing a jersey. And so wear a suit. Now I'm like, dang, I look unprofessional. So you're going to worry about it. And then you have a performance review coming up, right? That worry then turns into something like obsession. Dang, I didn't wear a suit. probably wasn't my best day at work. Like I'm going to, probably have a really bad file review for that, like that performance review with the supervisor, or whatever. And so like basically all I'm saying is like I feel like there's a build up progression of it. Like there's thought. That thought, when you spend a lot of time onto it, becomes worry. That worry then becomes like obsession.
Yeah.
Right. And then that obsession is literally the thing that's going to like negatively impact you. And like the crazy thing about anxiety, y'all, is like it just doesn't come in the form of like one thing. It comes in the form of like several. It can come in the form of like several different attacks. Like, you probably got relationship issues, job issues, and other things you're trying to get, and they're all coming at you. And honestly, that's like the worst part of anxiety, when it's not just one stray bullet. It's like an AK-47 is wildfire. So it's like
1,000%.
It's so important to like process that. So at least for me, that's how I kind of like acknowledge anxiety, where it's like it's thought, then it's worry, then it's obsession.
That's good.
And it's just like the buildup of anxiety. All of these are anxiety. It's just how much energy, how much attention you pay to it is how much you're investing in the anxiety. And so the goal is to not invest yourself in the worry or the thought any more than it needs to be, but like put that energy elsewhere so that you can allow that anxiety wave to like come in and then go back where it needs to go.
1,000%. That's good. I love that. And to your point, I love that you said that, because again, anxiety does play a positive role in some sense, right? Absolutely. It's like, oh, I feel anxious about this interview. It's making me remember, oh, I need to have a suit ready. Exactly. So some things you get triggered by anxiety, and there are easy solutions. But what we're talking about is things that you can't control, which is most of the things in our life we can't control. And that's when you get a little obsessive, to your point, and then it becomes, again, it starts to drive how you engage with things. Yeah. So when some potential problems come and there's no simple solution, you can't control it, that, what we're talking about is these are your steps going forward on the things that you can't control, which unfortunately is a lot of things.
It's a lot of things.
So yeah, I love that. I love that. It's a good distinction there.
That's good.
Shoot, we might be rounding third and going home. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the last. Oh, that's good. So like, I think the last thing we should process is like, what are some like, I love you. We've listed the 4. I think we got 4 steps.
4
steps.
Fluid list,
right?
Fluid.
Fluid. Yeah. Room for different ones and whatnot. But like we talked about, I was about to fall, huh?
Yeah. We're good.
But what do you call it? We talked about like 4 practical steps. Like what are I feel like we should like give like a nice sweet spot of like maybe 2 questions, maybe even 3 questions.
Okay.
Like what are some questions we could probably leave them with to kind of like reflect on like anxiety? Yeah. Let me see. I'll start off because I feel like you will have more fire questions.
I don't know. Cause you so put me on the spot with this, bro.
I know. So I think one question that comes to mind is, what is something that you've been spending a lot of time in thought on recently that you probably didn't give as much thought on a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago? So like, asking yourself like, what is something that I'm giving a lot of thought to that I wasn't originally or previously given a lot of thought to? Because I think that's like a good indication of like, okay, there's something that's starting to build up momentum or steam to be something that you can become anxious about. Yeah, I don't know if you have a question or you want me to throw it.
No, it's good. I mean, my question is, and what I care about is, what are some things, my question to people to reflect on is, what are some things for you that would allow you to intentionally pause and check in with yourself? Like, list some things, and I'll give you examples. We kind of already said these things, but journaling, yoga, meditation, prayer time, like all these things that will get you to pause and really give space for honesty in a really safe way, right? Like, I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but your self-reflection, you should be incredibly open and safe for yourself. Like, this is a judgment-free zone. When you start journaling, there is no, you write what you feel, but you don't need to like sit here and judge yourself for feeling these things, because if you're not a safe space for yourself, sure as hell can't be a safe space for anybody else. So be sure. So that's my direction on journaling, but in general, whatever you gravitate towards, sometimes it's biking for me too. So just have a list and work on that list.
Yeah. And then the last one, unless you have a fourth one, because we can keep.
No, you got it.
Yeah.
That's the best I can offer.
I think the last one that I would also add is maybe even reflect on like who are 2 to 5, and if there's more people, great. But who are 2 to 5 people that are safe spaces that allow you to be, that one allow you to be able to freely think these thoughts out loud without any sort of like judgment, and then also identifying what you need help or support with them in, right? We talked about like, you know, some people are good with just sitting with you in it, and others are like fixers. It's like, okay, you share with them this anxiety and now they go into like fix it mode.
Yeah.
Being able to identify if that's what you need is important as well.
And communicating it beforehand.
And communicating it.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of good friends where I'm like, hey, like this is one of those moments where like I just need to vent. Like I don't need any solutions. I just want to invite you into the situation, and they know that they can dial it back. Or I have some friends when I just go like jump right into it, they're like, hey, do you need to vent, or you need solutions, or you know, that sort of piece. And you know, I think that's like really important to know that you have those people, because sometimes like we don't catch anxiety early, and so we kind of catch it on like the tail end, and sometimes like that buildup just happens like all at once. And so like in acknowledging that, having people who are able and willing and want to help you and support you can be really great, so that you're not doing it alone, right?
Yeah. That's good. I love it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we really wanted to make this quicker because our last one was like long. So
Oh, we clutch. Look at that.
yeah. So we're excited, one, to share that with you guys, but really excited that we got to do it in a time that is respectful of your schedule.
Yes.
So, man, it's good chatting with you. This is good. Do you have any other
man.
thoughts that you want to share before we head out?
No, man, I think that was beautiful. That was beautiful. I love the topic, just being able to talk about anxiety. So I hope y'all were able to take some good notes from this and learn from us. Like, again, we are not specialized in this. We are just 2 Black men navigating this world the best we can, and we've learned some things along the way, and we're hoping that, you know, these seeds being planted in this capacity, like, bless somebody, and hopefully it blesses you and pours into you to, like, want to be better, do better, because you know better, right? So,
It's good.
Yeah, man. Thanks for y'all tuning in, and that's all we got for y'all. Peace.